Welcome to When Not Yet Becomes Right Now, the podcast where we dive deep into the moments of transformation, the times when not yet shifts into right now and everything changes. I'm your host, Jen Ginty, and this podcast is all about those pivotal moments in our life journeys. You know the ones, when the hesitation fades, when we take that first step, even if it feels like a leap. It's in these moments that growth and healing begins. Each episode will explore stories of resilience, moments of clarity, and the sparks that ignite real change. From personal experiences to expert insights, we'll uncover how people navigate the complex journey we call life and come out stronger on the other side. Whether you're searching for that spark in your own life or just curious about how change unfolds for others, you're in the right place. We'll discuss the ups and downs, the breakthroughs and setbacks, and how to embrace the right now, even when it feels out of reach. Because sometimes the hardest part of the journey is realizing that the moment you've been waiting for has already arrived. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's get started. Welcome to When Not Yet Becomes Right Now. Hi, I'm your host, Jen, and I'm here with a phenomenal guest. His name is Dwayne Morton, and Dwayne is an inspirational speaker who works with athletes in mental performance and is a former international basketball player. Last March, Dwayne discovered that he was misdiagnosed with a rare blood cancer for 18 years. In 2022, he was caught in the crossfire of a police shooting as a bystander. He has overcome both obstacles while maintaining his integrity, authenticity, and most importantly, his faith. Welcome, Dwayne.
Thanks for having me, Jen, and thanks for your listeners for giving us a platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it. Tell us your origin story.
Origin story. So for me is I grew up in a small rural town in Western Kentucky. And so it's amazing because like my aunt and my mother always told me I was special. And as you go through life, you know, those knocks that little kids take, you know, you lose part of that special part. And so I feel like if I would have listened, I'd been way more special. But like my aunt used to curl my front of my hair, like you went through the S, like the Superman S, and you know, always told me stories about Luke Skywalker and Superman, and so I think that's really important because it also gives us a chance to really talk about hero's journey too, part of it. And so life wasn't always easy in this small rural town. There was times where your light would always get dimmed, and there was times that your light would, you know, shine, and then it would be like, oh no, dim it. And so for me, I really big into athletics. And so my origin story, actually, that's really where my mindset and all that stuff started and gave me a platform to grow, but really grow into the type of identity that I am now. And so played basketball throughout all the way up to my junior year. I quit. My grandmother passed away, and so it's the first time I'd ever dealt with death. So I gave up the only thing I love just because I wanted the time to grieve. So I don't openly really talk about that very often, but that was really the reason why. And so I actually went back out my senior year, and I had gotten better, but the coach cut me because he labeled me a quitter. And so from that moment on, I was like, I'm not quitting anything unless I truly desire it for myself. And so that part led me to how I got to overseas. And that's how, you know, I became a former international basketball player. So I would say that aspect would be like chapter 1/2. And then all that kind of just like got me up to now.
So this blood disorder that you were diagnosed with, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So what it is it's called polycythemia, which now not as big of a deal. It's actually something that people are. So when I was first diagnosed with it, there was like 200,000 people in the world that had it. So it was classified as a rare blood cancer. So it was a blood disease that turned into a blood cancer. Also, I was given 5 years. Like it wasn't until I talked to my brother last week that he like reminded me because he remembered the conversation with the doctor and was like, he has about 5 years. And I talked to another physician and he said it's probably about 15. So through that, diagnosis is really difficult because it's like it's like a prison sentence. And so, because then you identify with whatever you got diagnosed with. And so I think for me, in my mindset, I tried to overcome it for 4 to 5 years, off and on, more on. But I would try different things in my diet, different things that were like, hey, can I? So to explain that what polycythemia is it's too much iron. And so the best way to explain this is like if I have a river and I have different ships or barges that are flowing down the river, if you put two or three, that's the normal amount. But mine was like 10 wide. And so it just jammed up. So my body was greatly deprived of oxygen. And so the symptoms of this are similar to sleep apnea, which that is what I got diagnosed with in April is severe sleep apnea. So I could have had this all fixed within probably a month time. And so that's the other thing is like in some aspects I feel like I was robbed and they thieved me a time, right? But I also I believe in grace. I really do. I believe that like I should practice grace even in times that I don't want to give grace because I want the same aspect of other people to do the same thing for me, right? So I truly believe in the golden rule. And so, I'm not upset at the doctors. The doctors, I don't believe they really were trying to do harm to me or, to steal time or anything like that. And so I really wanted to let people know like things happen for reasons. And I'm not a person who believes in like coincidences or like I went through this for a purpose. And so I think it was to make me have a bigger purpose. And so I think I answered that pretty well about the blood cancer, but I will tell you one of the stories that happened when I was overseas actually is the reason why I accepted that like I did, because I ran into a little boy who was about 5 years old. And so he was starving. I didn't know that at the time. And so um, there was a thing where the community gives us food. We take the food because like we were looked at as different symbols of this basketball team coming to these cities. And so it's kind of like if the Beatles rode up to different cities in the 60s. Like basketball, and when I played, it was 1996. So really the global expansion of basketball allowed me to do this. And so they really looked at us as like we were the Chicago Bulls, which is one of the most popular teams at that time. And so people would come from all over to watch us. And so they would always feed us and always give us their best. Well, I'll be honest, like what they were offering for me to eat, I wasn't going to eat. I just like I have a very picky uh I'm a very picky eater. So it looked more like pig slop and I was just like, hey, I'm not going to eat this, like I'm good. So I pushed my plate up and a little boy came by and he asked like, through my interpreter if he could have the food and my interpreter gave it to him and like said he could, after I okayed it and he grabbed the plate and he just started shoveling it in like he hadn't seen food. So it was a very humbling moment for me because I've never had to worry about those three things, the three essential things. I've never had to worry about food, water, or shelter. And so for me, it was a very eye-opening experience. And so when I got diagnosed, and also when I talk about the shooting part, I I don't believe it was through guilt, but I can't tell you if it is or it isn't right now. I don't feel like it was, but some people will interpret it the way they want. But I always look at it as like other people have it worse. And so for me, it was easier to push through than to me being like, oh, why me? And so because honestly, as you know, our nightmares are probably some other person's dream. And so um that diagnosis, like there's parts of the diagnosis where I went through different phases. There was phases where I was trying to overcome. There was phases where I was trying to be content. There was phases where I was trying to learn entrepreneurship. I was trying to learn how to communicate. There was parts where I was completely like rediscovering myself. So that's kind of the beautiful part of it, is that I had a clean slate, which, right now, as I'm talking to you, I feel like I have a clean slate too after I found out I was healthy. So it's like I'm going back to these different points of time.
Little one learning to navigate their big emotions? Meet My Moody Monster, the pull apart buddy to help kids understand and manage their feelings. With its fun, interactive design, Moody turns tough feelings into teachable moments, giving your child a playful way to express themselves. Whether it's after a rough day or when those big frustrations hit, Moody is there to lend a hand. Perfect for calming down or even just a cuddle. My Moody Monster helps your child communicate their emotions while learning healthy coping skills. Go to mymoodymonster.com to learn about Moody today. Yeah, I can see that. One of the things I practice DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and one of the distress tolerance coping skills is it has a bunch of different things in it, but one of it is comparisons,
Yeah.
where you can compare yourself to maybe another time in your life, or you can compare yourself to something else that's maybe a person that's going through something. And sometimes that can be really helpful for people. I myself have not really found that helpful in my own space because of mine's a little different. It's trauma, it's childhood
Right.
trauma and it's that kind of thing. But it is something that can help many people to understand where they truly are at. My son, when he was 4, he was diagnosed with Asperger's, which is a form of autism. They no longer call it Asperger's. It's just part of under the umbrella of autism. And, I really, I was so upset and I, blamed myself for this. I'm like, why did I give my son autism? And, I did throughout the time start to do the same thing with the comparisons like, well, he's healthy. He's getting what he needs. We are lucky enough to be in a state that is going to help him through, a Medicare program, that kind of thing. So, yeah, comparisons can be a lot healthier for people to be able to look at their own lives and see a positive way forward.
Right. So, and then there's like, I want to share, because I really haven't shared very much about just the cons of everything. I've been pretty much positive, but I feel like I was talking to my brother. He was like, "Hey, you kind of need to speak a little bit about the cons too." So just to kind of give you an idea, is right after I got diagnosed, I went to go see um, my grandmother. And so I was over there and she told me, she was like, "You don't look," she told everybody, she's like, "He doesn't look sick, he looks healthy." So I was always having that for the first few years because I look athletic. I just was out of shape, but I couldn't keep um when I like or found out that something was wrong, I couldn't get up 3 flights of stairs. And so what's crazy is the day before I ran 2 miles. So I knew something was wrong. Hey, I can't get up 3 flights of stairs. So it wasn't just me being out of shape. So I had to gradually like lose myself. Like, because, with me wanting to be athletics, I always want to take care of my body and things like that. And also I was going through some stuff that whole year. That whole year was heartbreaking. Um, and so I met someone who uh manipulated the situation. And so I was dealing with a lot, and then it was like, oh yeah, here you go. By the way, look, we're going to take everything away from you. And so that's kind of how I felt. And um, the main thing was I always moved though. That's what I was explaining, just to create some type of movement because I knew that that was essential. Like I always was like, okay, maybe if I did this, okay, and then I would try it, and I would be like, and I don't believe in failure. I believe in lessons. And so there was all these different lessons. And here's the thing, none of that would have cured me because we weren't going after the root cause.
Okay. That can be so hard, knowing or thinking for so long that this was some sort of, disease or disorder that was going to keep you down. And then getting 18 years later into it and finding out, well, that's not what I had at all, is a mind blow. I can only imagine how disruptive that had to have been for you.
Yeah, so it was disruptive, but also the shooting played a part. And
Okay.
so the shooting happened, I was dealing with PTSD and survivor's guilt. And
Mhm.
so it was like on all the time. It was like, oh, and I was like, hey, can we just like, because usually I would wake, like I would go to bed and would be like, hey, it'd be really cool if I could just lose this. Like I'd be praying to God, hey, please take this away. Like I would love to just see what I could do healthy. And after the shooting, it ended up being like, hey, I appreciate this miracle that you give me. And like, I'll go more into detail of the shooting. But like, then when I wasn't thinking about the blood cancer or the having to deal with it, that's when we found out I was misdiagnosed. So it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. And so it's, and everything was very divine timing too. So that's the other part is like everything was like right when things needed to change, but like they needed to change for my purpose. Other thing I'll tell you, Jen, is like I don't believe things happen to me anymore. For a while, I was playing in that victim mindset. I don't do that anymore. But I look at all these things that these two traumas have brought to me, being able to have the platform I'm able to have, being able to have these relationships that able to have. So I think that's really important is that like looking back, I can say, okay, I can appreciate it and acknowledge it for what it is. It sucked, but like it brought me to a higher level of myself.
Yeah. I think when we go through very specific, what many people would consider very negative circumstances and experiences, it helps to be able to look on it and say, what can I learn from this? And that's really hard to do when you're in the middle of it. But when you can learn to ask that question, I think it's really important for us to be able to understand our circumstances that way. So you have this blood disorder, and then over 2 years ago, you get into as a bystander into a shootout with
Yeah,
police.
so it wasn't me in a shootout. I
Right.
was driving by. So I was a bystander, but I was driving by. So think about being in this truck, just to kind of like, if people are able to close their eyes, like I'm a big person of visualization, so I visualize it 100,000 times because it still blows my mind of what happened. So if you close your mind, you close your eyes and just visualize it. I had my 3-year-old niece in the back seat.
Mm.
That's the other part of this. So this story also has a part with like I'm the protector, right?
Yeah.
Someone actually um, put me into gave me the responsibility of some of a small child, and so for me also the blood cancer. I'll share this real quick, and I'll get into the visualization. Is like I decided not to have a wife or kids. Like so, at 29, I was like, hey, I don't want anyone to carry my burden. So I want to like kind of make sure everyone understands. Like, so my niece is like my everything. My older niece is my everything too. So like I have two wonderful nieces. So I have the little one. We're going to get ice cream. I have to go to the bank. We go to the bank first, and I made that decision. So I just want to let you know, like I take ownership. I made the decision to put us in this situation. So if you close your eyes, and so I take a right hand turn outside of the bank, out of the drive, and it's probably not very far. You have the courthouse, and then you have the police department. And so for me, I'm driving about 45 mile an hour. And so I'm not pushing it. That's the thing, is like I'm not pushing it. So I had another vehicle that was in front of me. It was a big utility vehicle. And so what happened was like, and normally in that place, I'm driving on the other side of the road, the other side of the lane. Like I'm driving not on the far left lane, I'm driving on the right lane. And I passed the car and I could have got over and I didn't. So I'm really letting you guys really understand the situation. But I'm also like, this is definitely the first time I've went into this detail. And so what I saw was three men at the front of the sheriff office. So what it was two police officers and a criminal. Now again, I don't know this at the time. This is all, as I find out. So what happened as I'm driving by, a criminal, the police did not search him. Okay. He had a hidden gun in his waistband. And he had a knife that was attached to a rope around his neck. So somewhere someone messed up. And so as I'm driving by, the criminal takes the hidden gun out of his waistband, shoots the police officer point blank. Another police officer and him trade off shots as I'm driving through, and a bullet hits the truck. Doesn't go through the truck. It actually hits the C-pillar. And so the C-pillar is where the hood and the bed like meet. So it's like where the hood and the bed, there's that piece of metal. Mm-hmm. So it's not like really thick. It's kind of rounded. And so if that bullet goes to the left, it misses the C-pillar, it takes me out.
Okay.
If it goes an eighth of an inch to the right, it takes out my little niece.
Oh, no.
And so I want you to think of these odds of this miraculous thing. And so for me, when I look back, I look at it as the best case scenario happened. Okay. And so I look at it a little differently once I've took away the PTSD and the survivor guilt part out. But I was dealing with a lot. I was dealing with, hey, I failed being the protector of my little niece, who's like one of my favorite people in the world. And so when I got out of the truck, I didn't know where the bullet hit. So I was looking down. Like, oh, it hit like the truck bed, stuff like that. It wasn't until I started walking back towards the truck door, I look up and I'm like, oh, that's a lot different. And so me being as familiar with like sports and controlling my breathing, I just told myself, stay calm, control your breathing, not freak out. And so, but that is how, and then we found out all this other stuff that happened. And, I found out about the hidden gun and all these things. And so these things happened, I didn't get all the news all at once. Like the investigation happened like a year later and it came out on the news. And so as I'm dealing with my trauma, another piece of the puzzle comes out. So I was never able to really get over it on my own.
Yeah. So you were struck by the bullet.
It wasn't hit by me. It was the truck. Yes.
Okay. And your niece was okay.
Yes.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful.
We both would not have been here either. Like if that C-pillar is not there, we both would not have been here.
Oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry that you went through that. Yeah, that's definitely a PTSD moment. I can understand, holding on to something like that. And as you said, you did not receive information right away. It came in drips and drabs is what it sounds like.
Yes, it kept on coming in drips and drabs. And so the other part of it is the situation was not the best. Like if I could have, the other thing is like, I've been diagnosed with rare blood cancer, so I haven't been able to have a stable job, stable income. I've had, I have credit issues. I had all this financial issues. So it wasn't like I could just go call a lawyer and be like, hey, like I need help. So I reached out to the people that I felt like were going to be able to help me. And unfortunately, they had conflicts of interest. And so that was the other part. So I always was like, hey, that ain't gonna that I don't have to worry about having a lawyer. I know all kinds of lawyers. I know all kinds of attorneys. And so I think that's important to know is that when we think that things won't happen to us, like we're still rolling the dice. And so for me, it was like if I would have had a stable income, if I would have had those things. That's what I was gonna say. Like I'd already was like, I would have had certain people on retainers and things like that. And so that's the other part of the moral of the story is, um, if you can afford it, like those certain things like insurance and things you really need to have. So I really think that's important to know is that, um, I know that's one of the biggest things for me is like, I wish I would have been in a financial place where if something like that happened, I would have been able to be taken care of. The, uh, the other aspect of this is I went into talk therapy and I had done talk therapy before. It honestly made it worse. Like I loved the counselor that I saw. The therapist was amazing. The problem was the driving there, driving back. I had always had to bring it back up and always think about it. And so I feel like we deal with trauma in different ways. And it's really more about the person that's going through the trauma, how their needs need to be met. And so for me, I May or June, I met a guy who's a master hypnotist. So this was the first time I ever heard about hypnosis. Now I've heard about it, but I didn't really know it and know someone who could do it. And so he helped me tremendously. He took away the trauma from the misdiagnosis. He took away the trauma of the shooting. And so what you're seeing is you're seeing this being able to be on the side of me able to be talked about it. But it's because of like I was able to take someone took my file cabinet and dumped it on the floor and just picked up the files and put it back in the folder. Like so they were all jumbled up. And so what happened was he just allowed me to organize. He guided me. He guided me to reorganize and then put them in. And so that's kind of what I did. And so this is how I'm able to talk to you and talk about mental health. I think that's very important is there's
Yeah,
different modalities. Yeah,
there is absolutely. Everyone has a different way of working through their trauma, and no one way is the correct way. And also, as you said, there's so many modalities, especially nowadays. If you asked me 20, 25 years ago about what would help me best work through my trauma, I really wouldn't be able to tell you. And I tell this story to people a lot. Never turn down the opportunity to try something when it comes to working through trauma. When I was introduced to my current therapist, she was much younger than me. And I was like, oh, she's too young to understand what I'm going through. But she's also someone who was able to, when she was going through her training, to learn different modalities that, therapists my age may not have really known much about. So there are so many different ways to work through trauma, and no one way is going to be the right way. It's just like diets, ways of eating. Then one way is not the right way for everyone.
correct. So the other thing is like, so my hypnotist really helped me out, but I still had to like figure out what Dwayne wanted. So that's the thing is like like I said, I had this clean slate. And so there's this period of time where I'm 99.9% sure that I'm misdiagnosed, but I really haven't seen the work of the blood work to be able to say, okay, I'm 100%. So I got that in September and it was just such a glorious day. It was amazing. Like I cannot tell you guys like how excited it was.
How did
Once I
that
got
happen? How
yeah,
did
so
did they just say, you know what, we don't think you have it, and then start doing testing?
so how it happened was it's definitely a funny and ironic way. So in March when I found out, my oncologist actually moved to Chicago. And so we got a new guy. And so I went in there for a blood treatment and I was actually really needing one, I thought in my head. And they were like, hey, he can't see you today, but like you're going to have to wait a week because he has to see you to for you to have your treatment. And I was like, I was pissed off. I mean, I was not happy. And so for a week, I thought, hey, this guy is making me have to worry about having a stroke or a heart attack because that was the things that I had to worry about when I let the blood get too thick. And the very first time I saw this guy, I came in and he was like, this is going to be really hard for me and really hard for you. And I was like, hard for you. And I was like, because I was ready to tear him up. I mean, I was ready to just be like, give him a piece of my mind. That's what I was thinking the whole day. And he's like, I don't feel like you have this. He's like, I feel like you have. He's like, I'm looking at your test. And he told me, he said, when you did the bone marrow test and like, I forgot what year it was, like 7, 8 years ago, he's like, what kind of results did you get? And I was like, I had a really low chance of cancer. He was like, okay. He's like, they put you in a box and they never let you out. He's like, if I had seen you in that box, I would have let you out. He's like, you don't have this. And so he pretty much, I was released in March, but I still had that doubt because we have these self doubts anyway. And so I was just like, okay, maybe I trust him, but I don't. And the other part of this about the whole misdiagnosis is like, this actually kind of sparked my spiritual journey into difference of just, and what I'll say that is like my first confirmation of being misdiagnosed happened in April. I was in a Zoom group meeting with a friend of mine who just met me and invited me to like, so no one really knew me. I wanted to really make sure that everybody understands. Like, I did not know, I knew the host, but it was like for 2 days. And I had never mentioned about me any of the stuff I really been dealing with. And so she mentioned about this program, and I don't really recall how it was, but she was like, I'm gonna do something next week. And I was like, hey, I'm kind of dealing with something right now. And I hear someone come over the thing. He says, my guides are telling me to tell you you've been misdiagnosed. So this is not something I put on social media. There's no like 5 to 10 people probably knew about it. Mm-hmm. This is what I was dealing with. And so that kind of kicked off my spiritual journey in a different aspect of like, okay, how do I understand? Like, and then he said, I mentioned something about the shooting, and he said, he's like, you saw bright lights that day, like a bright white light. And I was like, yeah, I did. And I've never told anybody because I didn't want to sound crazy. And so I'm telling your listeners this because like sometimes things happen and they're unexplained. They're just miracles.
Yeah, the universe, I believe the universe sends us signs, and it does put us along a path. But yeah, that's incredible that they were able to pull those two things out, just these messages just for you.
Right. And so, and like I said, I didn't know him. He didn't know the story, none of that. So it was really, really amazing. So it gave me a chance to really check out my spirit. Like it was just a different way of like checking my spiritual journey. And so, in September, when I found out, you asked, like I learned through an app. Like I found out like my blood test, and I was like, oh, I was like, these blood tests, like my blood went down. My blood has never went down. So I was like, okay. So that's how I knew that like something, like everything was going on the right track. And as I was talking about the spiritual journey, I started meeting healers and doctors or natural doctors. I know we can't say that in America. So like, but that's what it is overseas, these. And so I met all these people, and when I was a young kid, I wanted to be a doctor. Whenever we played things with like Native Americans and stuff, I always like wanted to be the healer or the leader. And so that's where I've like really was able to I was really able to be like, oh, it's kind of funny because I always talk about those 1 to 8 years, how they have such a big impact. And so my inner child is jumping up and down, waving its hands, just being like, I told you, like, we want to be a doctor, you know? And so, um, and that's also something to help my mental health is, I met Victoria Rader. And so she is one of the biggest, greatest helps for me. So she's a quantum healer
Okay.
and she's exceptional. She's like world renowned. That's the other part.
What is a quantum healer?
So a quantum healer is where you use your mind. And so I don't know how it works. Like I cannot explain it to it, but what it does is it allows you to take care of whatever your issue is. And so just to kind of give you an idea, a couple weeks ago, I've had severe left knee pain, nerve pain for because everything's energy. That's the other aspect. Like everything's energy. And so it's a way of like using your energy to uh and like I said, I don't know exactly how. I don't even care how it happens. I just worry about allowing it to happen. And I think that's really important. And so but like I've had this nerve pain for a long time and she actually since the surgery and so um she was like, I feel like someone here needs to have their left knee pain like taken away. And so 5 minutes later, my knee pain's gone. But like, so I've read books on on these things, and so like I've looked into like Dr. Joe Vitale and like all these other people, and like she knows them, like they see her as a peer. So um, it's been an amazing journey with just that part. I just wanted to share that like as I'm going through this, I might not be able to explain it in the science part, but what I'm able to explain it to you is like I allowed it to happen. I think that's the most important part is like if you're open to things, things happen a lot quicker. You know, it's the whole manifestation law of attraction stuff.
Yeah. So what are you doing now?
So I have my own signature program that is fixing the launch called Show Up to Win. And so it's about mindset. Um, I have always been a big mindset believer. I've always had a pretty strong mindset. And so it's what it's going to do is to teach people how to overcome uh, adversity in unlikely and untimely circumstances. And so, you know, my target audience would be athletes or ex-athletes that are going through diagnosis and things like that. And so that is one of the things that like I was like I feel like I can really help people. I believe I can help people. I know this is why I went through all these things. The other thing is, you know, I was talking about finances earlier, and so I believe in really helping people. I don't believe in handouts. I think handouts are more for the giver than the receiver, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of makes people just feel good. And so what I like is called hand ups. So it's when you see someone on the ground and you pick them up. And so this is my vision. My vision is to find people who are struggling with trauma and take away the stressors. So if they have, you know, like let's say someone has a car accident and they go into debt, I want to be able to have a nonprofit to help them get out of debt. So that helps them release their trauma a lot faster. But it also, so I've got that I'm working on and also working on the medical part because I think that's extremely important is like to be able to give someone a clean slate as I think that would take away the trauma being like in their face every day, getting the bill. And so I'm working with a couple of people on it right now. So I'm hoping to have it out in March, April.
Oh,
And
that's
so
great.
it's just like what we're going to do is we're going to take the viral video, social media stuff. And so these people donate money all the time. So might as well use it for the right kind of means to get people out of, you know, debt who really need to be out of debt and not just, you know, give money to people who are just like, you know, buying nice cars or something. It's kind of so, and that's the thing is like I'm so purpose driven that like I do have an ego. Like everybody has an ego, but I set it aside. I just want to acknowledge it, hug it, and that's it. Like it's there,
Yeah.
but like I really want to do it for the community. And so, you asked like those two programs, like Show Up to Win is a community that I'm building because when I was younger, I was looking for it. So that's the reason I'm building it, but it's also to keep me consistent. So I think that's important, is to build the community to keep me consistent, which keeps them consistent. And so that's the reason why I built that. And so you can go right now to showuptowin.info, info, and you can go ahead and put your information in, and it'll actually notify you when the showuptowin.com goes live.
Oh, that's excellent. Great. And I will put that in the show notes. Is
Okay.
there, well,
Thanks.
thank you so much for coming on and telling your story.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having me and giving me a chance to talk to your listeners and give me another platform. I'm so grateful for this time.
Well, thank you. Dwayne has been through a lot in his life, medical trauma and PTSD from a near miss during a shooting. All difficult situations that he pushed through and has been able to live on the other side of the pain. I look forward to seeing Dwayne grow his community while helping others to heal.